Hola! This is Oblivious Alsk with Science or Not. And I don't speak a word of Spanish. Okay, so maybe one word, that word hola. Anyway, Science or Not is a show where I talk about some pretty cool science stuff, either that's come out recently or in the past that's kind of abnormal and you might not have heard of it. Of course, the or not comes in when I talk about things that have nothing to do with science, obviously. The big thing that we're going to talk about in this episode is organic oil. And oil in the sense of the stuff that you put in your car. Not like the oil and vinegar that you see at your table in certain delis. Which is slightly redundant because to the scientific community, organic means a compound containing carbon. So all oil is technically organic. However, by the actual term organic oil that I'm going to be talking about is simply synthetically made oil, which is really organic oil, but was made synthetically, so it turns into a confusing grammatical nightmare. But anyway, research to make solar energy into fuel has been going on for a really long time. But new research is making the science headlines lately. The first one that I want to mention is that some scientists in Spain have come up with a bio-oil that's actually produced by algae. Their idea is that they may be able to speed up the process that created the billions of gallons of oil that we're consuming these days. They're using some microalgae that reproduces at high speeds and creates oil as a byproduct of photosynthesis. In case you don't know, in photosynthesis specifically, carbon dioxide and water, along with energy, are converted to glucose or sugar and oxygen, which we breathe, plus other random byproducts. And one of those byproducts in photosynthesis of the algae that these scientists in Spain are working on is oil, of all things. They aren't the first ones to do something like this. What makes the lab that I'm talking about nice and ecological is that they're actually using carbon dioxide produced by a nearby cement factory that would otherwise be released into the environment to feed the algae they're using to make this oil. Every day, highly concentrated oily stuff is extracted from the algae to produce biomass, which is then turned into oil. You may be thinking, well, we shouldn't be using oil at all. It's ruining the planet. And you'd be correct. But this strategy is actually a more ecological strategy than most, since they're actually using carbon dioxide to produce the oil, which is a big greenhouse gas that everybody's always talking about. The scientists also said that they'll need about 5, maybe 10 years to make this stuff work, so it's still in progress. But they did say once they did get it to work, they said that they could make 50 square kilometers of land produce 1.25 million barrels of oil a day, which to put into context is almost as much as the daily export in Iraq. So if Americans keep on using oil at the rate they are, we're going to need this stuff. But also to mention is another research project that's going on to try to cut the middleman out of this process, so to speak. Generally, the idea of converting solar energy into fuel uses some sort of organism like plant or algae like we just mentioned. And then you make it into oil and you harvest the organism to get it. Another take on this, which I think is brilliant, is to take genetically engineered bacteria that makes oil. And all it would need to do this is, just like the algae you just mentioned, is simply sun, water, and carbon dioxide. And it creates oil as a byproduct. Bacteria is a great medium for this kind of stuff because it's a whole lot less complex than algae or plants. It's just, well, bacteria. Bacteria aren't that big, are they? They're like this, that big. They're actually calling this species of genetically altered bacteria cyanobacteria. And it can apparently produce diesel fuel or ethanol just right off the bat. No trying to convert it into some other compound. It's just there in its pure form as a completed product. The research team also said that they're efficient to the point that 15,000 gallons of fuel could be produced by just 1 acre of these things a year. The big claim that these guys are saying is that they could actually produce oil at $30 a barrel. I'm not entirely sure what it is right now, but I think it's somewhere around 100. So cutting the price of oil to less than a third? That would be pretty nice. Imagine the gas prices back down to around $1.30. Unheard of these days. The problem with all this is that the production of this oil is actually produced in a relatively small amount to the water that's generated with it. So you've got a whole bunch of water and just a relatively small amount of oil just kind of floating on top of it. And even if it is floating on top of it, in order to remove it cleanly at a massive scale, could be not so easy a job. Perhaps separating it at a small scale would be, but when you get gallons and gallons and barrels and etc., it gets kind of tricky. But even with this problem, an acre-wide demonstration of this big experiment is actually going to take place in the next couple of years. An estimate of how much oil would be produced was given in this story as well, namely 15,000 gallons a year for 1 acre. Just move the camera down a little bit. There we go, now I can hunch. But to compare the two estimates of how much oil would be produced given a specific amount of land, the algae strategy said that 50 square kilometers would produce 1,250,000 barrels per day. And the bacteria strategies said that in 1 acre, they said they would be able to produce 15,000 gallons per year. Now, 1 barrel of oil is equal to 42 gallons. So I converted the algae measurements to gallons per year an acre. And through these calculations, so you don't have to do them and I do, it turns out that if I did my math correctly, the algae strategy is 100 times more productive than the bacteria strategy. But then complications occur when you get production costs and suitable land for this kind of stuff. These calculations may be accurate, but they're barely anything to decide which strategy is better than the other. Besides these two cases making biofuel, ExxonMobil is actually intending to invest $600 million in this kind of research for the near future. Something I wanted to add while we're still talking about oil. Near that huge Gulf Coast oil spill that happened recently, there was a black coral colony that has not been affected by the oil spill yet, that they actually tested and determined that it was 2,000 years old. Now this is an extremely slow-growing type of coral. In fact, it grows 200 times slower than your fingernails. But that was just something kind of cool that I wanted to mention. But let's get off the subject of oil, and we'll do it with something very unscientific, specifically a hot dog taking a bath in beans? What? Huh? Where did that come from? I don't know. This is science or not, which means that not could be something incredibly random. And although this has nothing to do with the next story I want to talk about, I just needed a segue. But about the last thing that I wanted to talk about today, at first I thought it was going to be kind of silly, but then I thought about it a little and it actually makes total sense. I know this is going to be a painful question to ask, but have you, the viewer, ever broken up with someone you were really into? The likelihood is that you felt your heart shrinking, that every part of your body was tense, or you were going to fall apart. You couldn't sleep because of a headache, or various things like that. Well, all of these symptoms actually have a realm outside of emotion. In a new study, it was found that pain felt in a breakup or rejection is actually routed through the physical pain areas of the brain, and not just the emotional ones. So let's imagine the situation. You're wanting to have a little fun with your girlfriend. Hey baby, let's have some fun tonight. No, I don't want to do that. So she doesn't want any, and you get mad because you say that you never get any, but in fact you do. But that's another story. Anyway, she ends up getting frustrated at you, and you get mad at her, and you guys have a fight, and she ends up breaking up with you. Yeah, I know it sounds trivial and silly, but I've heard sillier reasons for people breaking up. So just go with me on this. So you feel bad, because now not only do you know that you're not going to get any for a really long time, you feel actual physical pain, and not just in your pants. Bad, Alan, bad. This is a PG show. Well, hey, you know you laughed. Okay, I did. And you should too, yes. It was hilarious. You know it? I'm pointing at a laptop telling it to laugh. I must be insane. So insane that I want to mention a joke. This compound is known as diethyl ether. It is known as such because it has two ethyl groups and an oxygen in between them. When you have an oxygen in between two other groups, usually carbons, it's known as an ether. That being said, what is this? Can't guess? It's the Ether Bunny. Also a really bad pun. But I just thought that was a great chemistry joke. You guys who are watching this are probably just kind of rolling your eyes. It was so bad, but I liked it. And I'm a pun kind of person. I'm a punny person. So anyway, links to everything that I talked about are in the drop-down bar below. In fact, there's a bonus story that I didn't talk about in the drop-down bar below as well. If you have any cool science stuff that you'd like me to talk about, just let me know in a comment or a video response or even a message on Facebook for you guys who are my viewers and my friends. And I might just mention it in a future show. Like me if you like me, and subscribe to me if you really like me. Adore me, love me, or even hate me. I guess that works too. Subscribers are subscribers after all, and trolls will be trolls. So I believe that is everything I have to say. But that's all I got for you. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time, or perhaps on my vlog, which I have notated somewhere down there or down there. I don't know which side I've got it on, but it's gonna be there. Hasta la pasta. And pasta because not vista, because vista, Windows, ooh, it's bad, 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 bad. Just stay away from that.